What's up, guys? Welcome back for some more Glorious Smite. Tonight, with our conquest guide for Season 4 for the complete noob, and we'll talk about god roles, what you're supposed to do in your role, god composition, and conquest routes. That's the route you take at the start of a conquest match, where you should be going and why, and all that good stuff. Again, this is for the complete noob, usually for the solo queue or duo queue. For anyone else, this might not be of use to you. So let's begin with solo lane. And solo lane is always the short lane. That's the shortest distance between the two towers. So no matter what side you're on, you're going to wherever the shortest distance is. Generally speaking, you will take a tanky god to this lane. That is usually warriors. You want to build bulky, usually with only 1 or 2 damage items. Some people even go with 0. And you're to be a frontline presence. You'll be more fed than everyone bar the hunter in both teams. You'll have a lot of tanky items. You'll have countered, hopefully, what your enemy's building, what your enemy jungler's building, so you can be a good frontline presence. However, as you get more experience in this role, and you come to understand what you can do, you can experiment a bit more. Bulky guardians work really well in this lane as well. Gods like Ymir, Kumbhakarna, they all fit really well. Geb even. And even bulky mages as well, like Zhonghui and Hades fit really well. You build the same sort of style, mostly defense, mostly counter, and a little bit of damage. Your damage is only just pen, so you get 1 or 2 pen items, the rest counter defense, or hybrid items as well. That would be like Gem of Iso, Mail Vernal, items that offer a defensive stat and an offensive stat. And then if you get even more experience, you could even look for more supportive gods to get fed. They do similar things to these tankier gods, but slightly different. Sometimes they might hang back and be more of a peel god, like Aphrodite could work. She'll build quite bulky, focus on healing your carry, your hunter, and try to peel and protect them, keep them safe, putting your body on the line when need be, because you again will be still quite tanky. And even other kind of off support roles, you know, like Chang'e, Hell. Chang'e can be a bulky mage as well. Hell can be a bulky mage as well, but again, they can kind of fall between both. And of course, when you get really experienced, you can put pretty much anything here, as long as again you fulfill your role, because again you'll be quite far ahead, quite fed, and you should be counter building quite well. But generally speaking, to keep it simple, pick your favourite warrior, play aggressive, counter build, and you're sorted. Next up, we have mid laners. As the name suggests, they're going the mid of the map. And generally speaking, they're mages. Your objective is to build bursty, which is generally pen power. Occasionally you can build a few hybrid items. Poseidon might like Gem of Iso, Goobus might like Gem of Iso, Zeus might like a breastplate or a spirit robe. But generally, penetration, power, big AoE, big ults. You want to hit as much people as possible with your big AoE. You'll be quite squishy, so you'll be hoping to sit back. And that's generally it. Clear the wave, try and get pressure, try and poke down the enemy, look for a big ult. That's your objective. Try and hit as much people as you can, try and use your CC wisely, try and keep yourself alive, because you will be quite squishy. And again, much like with solo, as you progress and get experience playing mid, you can experiment taking a hunter in mid, taking a warrior in mid, taking an assassin in mid. As long as you know what you're doing, you can accomplish it by, you know, having big DPS, big burst, and providing the AoE that your team needs, you'll be fine. You can place non-AoE mages or kind of lower DPS mages in mid, but without the correct balance to your team composition. So let's just say you take a Chang'e mid or a Zhonghui mid, and you build them how you would build them in solo. Yes, you've still got a lot of damage, but it's not quite the same amount. And if you're the only magical damage source that's actually building damage, it might not be enough, and it might hurt your team. So you've got to be careful with what you take here and how you build them. Like I said, pen power is usually key, big AoE, big ultimates. It's pretty simple stuff. Next up, we have your junglers. This will generally speaking be assassins, and you'll usually start in solo, I'll talk about that later on, before progressing to the jungle. And you'll be a 3-man gank squad with your support and your mid. Your objective is to secure your buff camps, try and steal the enemy buff camps, secure the neutral camps, and you'll need to be sort of the initiator, the leader of the 3-man gank squad. Because you should hopefully have slightly more gold in the mid, and both of you will have a decent amount more gold than the support. Your build will, generally speaking, be inverted of the warrior solo lane. They generally get 1 or 2 damage items and the rest defense. You're looking for all damage and 1 or 2 defense. So lots of pain, then 1 or 2 defense items, preferably the defense items with cooldown. And your main objective is to try and kill the big threat in the enemy team, usually the hunter or the mid. If you can kill them, that puts your team in a fantastic position. And if need be, you can sort of be a frontliner or tank a tower when necessary, because hopefully again you'll have this 1 or 2 defense items, so you're sort of like a midliner. Don't be afraid to take the lead, don't be afraid to tank the tower. Hopefully you've got 1 or 2 defensive items. And like for all the roles, once you get better at it, better at jungling, you can take, of course, ability warriors into the jungle like Tyr, like Chak. You can take guardians like Athena, like Ymir. And you can even take hunters like Ullr, Cupid, and her. And eventually when you get really, really good, you can take mages like Hebo and Gubis. Next up, we move on to our hunters, and they will usually be found in dual lane. However, more and more, the support's leaving you on your own. The dual lane is the lane with the longest distance to the side between the 2 towers, so you're never confused with where to go. Your main objective is to not die, keep your lane warded. Your support will help you ward, but you should take wards too, and just farm the hell up. Get really, really big, really, really fed. You're hoping to have a big impact in the team fights. You're going to be the sustain damage, so they want big DPS from you. That's usually why it would be the auto attackers that go to this lane, like the hunters. However, like with every role, once you get more experience, you can take other classes there. There is, of course, one very well known and powerful mage that goes here, Freya, and there used to be other mages like Sol and Kronos. They can still go there, but in my opinion they're not very good anymore, but you can still of course take them. Then when you get more and more experience, you can take assassins, Bakasura, Awilix, they can do it too, even warriors. But I feel with warriors you're hoping to cheese the lane because they just can't do what hunters do in the mid to late game, so it's very much so a cheese factor, and that's what makes it harder to take non-hunters to this lane, because hunters in the late game are just the strongest class in Smite. They're very hard to keep up with. But that is generally what you're home to do. Your main objective in team fights is to not die, much like the mage, and try and kill the other big damage, or if you're being jumped on by the enemy tankier targets, again, try not to die, try and get through their CC, try and deal a lot of damage while not taking much damage. I know it sounds very simple, but they'll be trying to CC you a lot, so you've got to position yourself very, very smartly, or if possible, try and run away from them without fighting them and get to the enemy squishes and try and take them out, and hope your team will sort of protect you and peel for you if you kind of wriggle away from the enemies. And last but certainly not least, we have the support. Generally speaking, you're the furthest behind in your team, so it will almost always be a guardian who takes this role, because they are the naturally tankiest in Smite. So your main objective is to help your hunter push up a first few waves, eventually rotate, become the 3-man gang squad. In terms of build, you're looking to counter the enemies while also building very defensively. Order items are very good to help your team in team fights. CDR is very good to get more CC, and depending on the type of guardian you are, you'll either be initiating, try to focus their squishy, mage, hunter, occasionally assassin, and some guardians like say Sylvanas or Kazembo without blink will usually set back to be more of a peel god to help defend your squishies when their tanks engage on them, so you can push them away and get them out of the way to allow your DPS to, well, apply their DPS. And like with every other role, once you get more comfortable at it, you can take warriors here. They fit very well because they're also quite tanky, and a lot of assassins also fit this role surprisingly well. Fenrir, Thor, they fit it quite well. And even some mages. Aphrodite support has been known to work. It does have some success, but it can be quite difficult. Of course, she is very much so a sit back and peel type of character. But I would always again recommend you start with your guardians. So that's everything. That's all the classes, that's all the roles that need to be covered. Next we're going to move on to general team comp, positioning, and your routes and where you would go in the game. So this is our team comp. As you can see, and this is very important, they both have 2 magical to triple physical, and you generally want a 2-3 ratio no matter what. 4-1 can work, but there's a lot of pressure on that 1 to really build full damage, not die, and deliver it. And of course, it's fairly obvious why this is important. If you're all the same type of damage, physical or magical, the enemy can all build 1 or 2 magical defensive or physical defensive items along with their usual damage items, and they will simply outtrade you across the board. They have that luxury of building just the one type of defense, whereas you don't. You have to build 2 types, which makes it harder for you and easier for them, and you just get countered. So you don't want to do that. Okay, so now we move on to the routes. The hunter and support will both start in lane and push up and try and clear each other's wave. If you clear at the same time, you can go and each get your own buffs. If you win and push them in quite aggressively, you can try and steal some of the small minions around about their buff camps, and maybe even try and take the actual main buff minion. If not, you take your small lead, go back to lane, you'll hit 2 first. This gives you a lot of pressure. But if not, and you just break even, you just clear each other's waves again, and then go take your own buff and they'll take their own buff and you meet back up. Eventually, after a few waves, the support will leave and join up with mid and jungle. Mid, you'll start, who would have guessed it, in mid. And you'll desperately be trying to outclear the other mid. If you can outclear them and push them in, you've got a few options. If your dual lane's also winning, you can try and invade and steal their buffs, because they'll be pressured by minions and won't be able to get there in time. If your dual lane is equal or behind, you might have to go try and defend your buffs, or if they're equal, you can go to the fire allies and try and join up with your jungle and solo who'll be trying to take that. That'll be your way of getting a kind of small lead. If, however, your jungle and solo are losing, and you see that their jungle and solo are going to try and invade your camps, you can go and try and defend them 3v2 because you've pushed in your lane, and that's a risk they'll have to take. And then we get to jungle and solo. Generally speaking, jungle and solo will start in jungle and solo. Right. If you win the lane push, you've got 2 options. I guess 3. You can go for the fire allies. If you can get the full camp, you'll hit level 2. That gives you a big advantage. You can invade off that, but as we've discussed, it's a risk that if your mid's also losing, their mid could come and you'll be 3v2. It's a tougher fight. You might have the level lead, but it's 3v2. You have to be careful. Or you can go back to lane with your advantage, or you can just go to your buffs and then to lane. This is where it gets complicated. Sometimes the jungler will start in mid and not in solo. Now if this happens, it goes without saying, whoever's 2v1, the one loses. So your mid will usually get pressured because it's 2v1, and their solo will normally get pressured because it's 2v1. And now both teams who are 2-man parties are going to invade each other's buff camp. This always happens. You essentially take each other's buff. If you're in mid, if you're the mid jungle and mid, you can go and try and steal their speed buff, or you can go and try and take the red buff. If you suspect the jungle solo's coming to speed, you would go try and steal the red. If you suspect the duo is trying to come to the red buff to defend it, you don't want to be 3v2'd, maybe you would just go do your own buffs. It's all quite risky, but generally speaking, if it's 2v1 and you push in and pressure, you take speed. And the same scenario in solo. If you're 2v1, you get pressure, you push in, you're going to go take their buffs. And finally, it's possible for both 2-man parties who won lane to go to the neutral camps, the mid harpies and the fire allies. That would be sort of your go-to. And of course, it's possible to bump into each other and try and steal them from each other. And that's mostly the start of the game. As the game progresses though, you'll be trying to take your own buffs, trying to steal their buffs, and trying to secure the neutral buffs. And it'll be basically 1-3-1 is essentially the meta. Right? You'll have a hunter in dual lane, your kind of fed tank in solo lane, and your 3-man gank party in the mid and the jungle. Sort of roaming, warding, counter warding, and trying to secure any kind of neutral objective, particularly the big ones if a fight breaks out. And the kind of big kind of combo breaker would be the rotations from the dual lane or the solo lane. Right, you've had enough, you're fed, you've got a slight lead in lane, and a slight lead's all it takes. You force them back, you know they've not got teleport, you know they can't get back in time, you can go be the difference. If you can win a fight or push them back to base, you can take a neutral objective and you can start the snowball, which will eventually lead to victory. And that is pretty much Smite Season 4 in a nutshell. Hopefully it's been good for the complete noob. Hopefully you've learned something. If you've not learned anything, feel free to leave a comment and I will do my best to answer it. So guys, thanks all for watching. As always, see you all next time.